All right. We'll get going on finishing up 11.2b. I do also want to let you know tomorrow I will not be here. I'll be at a conference. Mrs. Velasic is the sub. So there will be a lesson tomorrow that I have the recording for that. So you'll take notes in class. You should have time to work in class after that's done. And then I did add this onto the board after tomorrow's lesson. That's halfway through the chapter. I know we'll be in the middle of 11.3, but that's when I give the mid-chapter quiz. So there will be a review on Monday and then quiz on chapter 11 so far on Tuesday. So I'll have your homework quizzes back to you by Monday so that you can look over those and get ready for your quiz on Tuesday. And I did, or I think I mentioned this yesterday, I'm not having you use the graphing calculators on the quiz. I do have you use them on the test because we use them more than just in this lesson. So you'll have more time to practice with them. I do have you use them on the test. But I do have on the quiz, you'll see this on the review also, I do have screenshots from the graphing calculator. So everything we're doing right now with the graphing calculator, what we're finding from it, you still need to be able to pick out that information if you see the screen, and then be able to answer questions with it. So this lesson, while I'm not having you use the graphing calculators on the quiz, this lesson is on the quiz. I just wanted to review with you. On the front here, you have your distributions, what they look like if you draw a curve over a histogram. You also have the distributions if you make a box and whisker plot. The second example, we're going to be making box and whisker plots. So if you turn to example 2, actually there's one other thing. You can turn to example 2. I'm just going to show this on the front to review. Remember that when you have a distribution and you're looking to see what statistics to use to describe the data, if it's a symmetric distribution, you use the mean to describe the center, the standard deviation to describe the spread. If the distribution is skewed, you use the 5-number summary. So the median would be the center, and then you have your min, your max, your quartiles to describe the spread. In example 2, though, we are comparing distributions. So when you have to compare them, it is slightly different. So if you're comparing 2 sets of data, if both have a symmetric distribution, so only if both distributions can be described as symmetric, then you find the means of both and the standard deviations of both, and you compare those. So you compare their means, you compare their standard deviations. If both distributions are skewed, or if one is symmetric and the other one is skewed. So if either of your 2 distributions is skewed, then you use the 5-number summaries. Because you have to have the same statistics to compare. So you can't take the mean and standard deviation of the symmetric one and then the 5-number summary of the skewed one and compare those. It has to be the same data. So if either one is skewed, then you use the 5-number summaries for both. So in this example, we have Tyler and Jordan, but I didn't realize that till I was working through the example with this class. But they're both working through several brain teasers on the computer. The time in minutes that it took to complete each game is shown. So you have Tyler's time in minutes, you have Jordan's time in minutes. And it says to use a graphing calculator to create a box and whisker plot for each data set and describe the distribution of both. So just like we did yesterday, we need to enter our data into lists, but this time you are using 2 lists. You're using a list for Tyler's times and a list for Jordan's. There are 5 by 4, so there are 20 times for both of them. So I'll review with you how to get there. You want to Once your calculator is turned on, you want to go to the Stat key. So if you turn it on, if anything's still on your screen from people using these yesterday, you can just press clear to get rid of it. It's not going to affect anything. Bless you. But Stat key again is the third column, second row. So if you hit Stat, you should get this menu. We want option 1 to edit our lists so that we can enter data into them. So just hit enter. And then you probably have the list entered from yesterday's example from people using the calculator, so you want to clear that. So again, to clear it, you arrow up to highlight the name of the list. You hit clear, and then you hit enter, and that gets rid of all the numbers. And if you do have things in multiple lists, then clear all of them. And then again, pay attention to which list you're putting the data into. So I'm going to put the Tyler data into my L1 and Jordan into L2.
Mine doesn't have an L2. It goes right to L3.
That's okay. So you just want to make sure that
no, it's an L3.
just know it's L3. Yeah, if you don't have an L1 and an L2, again, just make sure you know or write down the names of the lists you do have so that you're able to get the right data later on. And then when you are done, just make sure, like you can see the two ends of my list, they have the same number of values in each list. So just make sure that your lists do line up as kind of a check that you're not missing something. Okay, I know some of you are finishing up. I'll give another minute here. When we create these box and whisker plots, by the way, if you have box and whisker plots, you are able to graph more than one on the same screen, which is what we will be doing. I am just going to make note. So again, if you have different list names, I'm just going to put here I have Tyler's in L1 and then Jordan's in L2. So you might want to write that down if you have like L2 and L3 or L1 and L3. Okay, I'm going to go on, but if I need to get anybody caught up, if you're still entering things, just let me know. I can go back and explain it again. So then, like we did yesterday, we want to make sure our stat plots are turned on. So you want to hit second and then y equals. So second and then y equals, you should get to the stat plots screen. And because we are going to make 2 box and whisker plots, we need to turn on plots 1 and 2, but make sure that they're set to box and whisker plots. So you can hit enter onto plot 1. It should already be turned on from yesterday, so on should be bolded. But then for the type, so if you arrow down, there's 2 box and whisker plots. I believe the difference is the first one will show you if you have an outlier, it won't connect the whisker all the way to the outlier. You'll have your whiskers and then an outlier would be like a dot on the outside of either whisker, whereas the next one over doesn't do that. So I usually use that fourth one. So you just have to arrow over to the fourth one. You do have to use the right arrow. So if you have like 2 rows, you have to keep just arrowing right, not arrowing down. And then click enter when it's over that first box and whisker plot, the fourth thing that it shows you. And then you should have the name of one of your 2 lists, preferably the first one. So my first list was L1, that name should be there. Frequency, again, you don't need to change. And then where it says mark, this is just if you have an outlier, what marking it used to show it. So it would show either a square, a plus sign, a small filled in square, or a dot. So it's up to you if you have a preference on the mark that it shows. Otherwise, you don't need to change it. Anybody not have their correct list name here? Okay, so then what I'm going to have you do to turn on plot 2, we can actually, if you notice at the top, you see plot 1, 2, and 3. You can arrow up and then over to plot 2, and then just click enter so that it brings you to plot 2. So this one you also want to turn on. So right now mine's turned off. I want to click enter over on so that it turns on. You want this type to also be a box and whisker plot. So if you need to change it, mine's already highlighted, but arrow over again to the fourth one and click enter to change it to a box and whisker plot. And now here, definitely make sure that your second list name is there. So my second list was L2. Make sure that yours says your second list. Does anybody's not say their second list? Okay. What does yours say and what do you need it to be? Okay, so if you need to change it to L1, L2, L3, or so on, if you look above the 1 through 6 keys, you should see L1, L2, L3, L4, L5, L6. So if you need L2, just hit second and then the number 2. If you need L3, just hit second and then the number 3. Anybody still having trouble with that? With their second list name? Okay, then I'm just going to have you guys check this again. So again, go back to your home screen. So hit second and then mode for quit, just so you get back to the home screen. And then once you're there, just click, don't hit second first, just click Y equals. And make sure again that nobody yesterday typed anything in here. This should still be blank. So if things are typed in, clear it out. And then notice both plot 1 and plot 2 should be highlighted as long as you turned them both on. Plot 3 should not be. And then once you have that, again, to get that nice window, you hit the zoom key on the top and do option 9 for zoom stat. So zoom again, those 5 keys at the very top. Zoom is the third one, the middle one. So hit zoom, and then you can either just hit the number 9 or arrow down to 9. It should say zoom stat. And then you should get a screen that shows 2 box and whisker plots. Does except yours they won't be different colors. Anybody else? If yours doesn't look like that? If your two box and whisker plots look the exact same, it's because, or it's probably because in your two plots you have the same list, so they should not look the exact same. Okay, so the top box and whisker plot is your first one, so that would be Tyler's data. The bottom one is your second list, so that would be Jordan's data. So if we look at the top box and whisker plot, how would you describe that distribution? What? Well, describing the distribution pretty good isn't a response. So it's either symmetric or it's positively or negatively skewed. Symmetric, Brady? If you go to y equals, do you have numbers typed into your thing? Did you go to y equals before when I said it? Where there? No, like y equals, did you have numbers here? Okay, so yes, I would say that the top box and whisker plot, Tyler's data is symmetric because you see that median line going through approximately the middle of that box. So I'm going to say here Tyler's distribution is symmetric. And I'll put a comma. Then if you look at Jordan's, the bottom box and whisker plot, how would you describe that distribution? Positively skewed. So the median is closer to the left side and that right whisker is longer. That's kind of like your tail. If the tail's on the right, it's a positive skew. So I'll say here, and Jordan's is positively skewed. So again, describing distributions, thinking ahead to your quiz on Tuesday, when I ask you to describe the shape of a distribution, it's either symmetric or positively or negatively skewed. That is what that question is asking for. Then it says compare distributions, again, using either means and standard deviations or 5-number summaries, justify your choice. So if one distribution is symmetric, the other is skewed, what data should we be looking at? The 5-number summaries we should be looking at for both because one of them is skewed. So I'll put here since one distribution is skewed, the 5-number summaries should be used. And now we actually need to find those 5-number summaries for both sets of data. And we do have to find them one at a time. So, and this is what we did yesterday, where you get that list where it gives you the mean and the standard deviations and the 5-number summaries. It gives you all of those statistics. So again, to get there, you hit the stat key. You don't have to go back to the home page, just hit stat. And then your 3 menus across the top, you want the second one, you want calc, so you arrow over to the right for calc. And hit enter for option 1 for the 1 variable stats. And now here again, if you have a yellow cover, my list right now says L1, meaning it's going to give me Tyler's data. I'm not sure right now. I'm going to have you guys try it if you have the black cover. I know yesterday you just hit enter, but we only had 1 list. We didn't have 2. So if you have this screen right now, as long as yours says your first list, so Tyler's list, you can arrow down to calculate. If you do have a black cover, just hit enter and let me know what happens. Did you hit enter? Did you get this, like these numbers up here? Yes, okay. So if you just hit enter and you have the black cover, it should give you the data from your first list. So you're going to have to type something in to get the second list. I'll show you what to type in for that one. But this is Tyler's data. Again, we want the 5-number summaries. Those are at the end. So you have to arrow down, and you should see your last 5 numbers are your min, Q1, median, Q3, max. So I'm going to write those down. I'm going to write them next to Tyler's table up here. So the minimum is 2.8. Quartile 1 is 3.45. Median is 4.35. Quartile 3 is 5.15, and max is 6.1. Okay, and then we have to do that again to get Jordan's data. So I'm going to clear this on my screen. I'm just going to hit clear. You can clear it when you're done looking at it, or you can look, I wrote it down up here too. Now I'm going to hit those same keys again. So go to stat, arrow over to the right once to get to that calc list, 1 variable stats, hit enter. But now if you get this screen, you need to change the list name to your second list. So again, you can just hit second and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 if you need to change it to like L1, L2, L3, so on. So I need mine to be L2, so I'm going to hit second and then the number 2. And then calculate if you have a black cover. So yours right now says 1 variable stats and your cursor is blinking. If your second, or type in the name of your second list after it. So if your second list was L2, hit second and then the number 2. So it says L2 after it before you hit enter. And then these are the values you should get for Jordan's. Did yours work, Julius, by doing that? Okay. Because otherwise the black covered calculators default to the first list. So you have to type the name in of your second list to get that. And again, arrow all the way down to the bottom to get the full 5-number summary. So Jordan's minimum is 2.7. Quartile 1 is 3.75. Median is 4.35. Quartile 3 is 5.4. Max is 6.4. Okay, and then it did say in part B to compare these. So you not only find the data values, but you want to compare their measures of center and their measures of spread. So the median is the measure of center. Notice both of them have the same median time. Okay, so I'm going to write that down when you're comparing their medians. I'll put both had the same median time of 4.35 minutes. If you look at the rest of their data, though, their min, max, and their quartiles, overall, what you should notice is that Jordan had a lower minimum and a higher maximum. So his data is more spread out. Tyler's is closer together. So Tyler's times were all closer together to that median versus Jordan's times were more spread out. So that's how I would describe the spread. I could say they both had the same median. However, I'll put Jordan had a larger range of times compared to Tyler. And it all depends on the data and it depends on what you're finding. So I know this is one example where you're comparing two different people. Sometimes you might be given data about the same person or the same group of people 1 year and then a following year. So then you have to make sure when you're comparing them that you're looking at whether from year to year that person or those people improved or didn't improve. So it's all about looking at what the data is and then explaining what you're finding from the numbers. All right, so what I need you to do then